Welcome back to GTD. I'm Micah Farmer, joined as always by Keegan Miller, and it's time for some F1 conversations from this past weekend's Canadian Grand Prix, where for the first part of the race, not much happened. A lot of drivers were holding station, classic, this set of regulations, dirty air, DRS train stuff, and then we had some events happen in the last few laps of this race. McLaren finally came together. The two drivers, Lando Norris catching up to Oscar Piastri. Yes, got inside him at the hairpin. They were together, DRS together down the back straight, went into the final chicane. Oscar Piastri absolutely did Norris under braking. Lando got the run out of the corner and then was right on the back of Piastri, and instead of going for the space on the outside, went, what if I drove into the back of him? And shockingly, it didn't work out too well for Lando Norris. Collided with the back end of Oscar Piastri's car, lost his own front wing, broke his suspension on the wall, and did not finish, although it was still a classified finisher.
Well,
but yeah, Lando Norris out of this race.
You said went for space. I didn't see space there. I mean, I didn't.
No, I said instead of going for space on the other side.
Yeah. There was a little bit of grass. That's about all I saw. I'm not sure what he saw or what he thought was going to happen. But we'll never know. We don't have to know. You know, racing incident. He owned up to it. We'll move on. All right. They still got a battle for the Drivers' Championship.
Not a racing incident because they gave him a 5-second penalty, and then somehow not a penalty point. Which, how is it a penalty for causing a collision and then not a penalty point?
Maybe because my assumption would be nothing happened to Piastri. It didn't affect him at all whatsoever.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be applied evenly regardless of the outcome. It's not based off the consequences. It's based off the actions.
Because he's the golden boy?
And I think it's because his passport has a British flag on it.
Golden boy, yeah, you know, there's a little bit. I don't know. You must be new to the FIA. There tends to be a little bit of favoritism and or doing what they want, if you will.
Yeah, they kind of just can do whatever, and no one can stop them.
There's no point in trying to figure out why, because they don't care. We shouldn't care. This is kind of their philosophy, and I'm not okay with that. But I'm going to move on before they fine us for talking about them too much on the podcast.
That's true.
So
our YouTube channel is being deleted by the FIA if you don't see it next week.
Yeah, but there's a lot to talk. Well, we're making a lot to talk about because there's interesting storylines here. And first and foremost, I don't know if I said this on the podcast last week or right before we started rolling, but I was talking about George Russell, and I even said George Russell will be back on point, and it'll be the weekend I don't pick him because I picked him pretty consistently throughout the year, and
yeah,
lo and behold, I knew he was in my head going just pick Russell, but I'm like I need to see a little bit more before I can do it. Well, shouldn't have done that. Should have just gone with my gut, picked Russell, but it didn't. Anyway, he won.
For the watchers of the podcast, Keegan did say that on the podcast, and then it was not published because his footage corrupted. So he did say it on the podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But hopefully this is
so corrupted. Rip Keegan's mastermind prediction.
Yeah. But Antonelli also on podium. On the podium. So great weekend for Mercedes. Bounce back weekend. They needed it.
Kimi Antonelli, first F1 podium.
They started out really good in the season. We're like, oh, Mercedes, they're going to be the hunt for Team 2, right? It's going to be McLaren. And then we thought Mercedes pretty much had a hold on it for the first 2 weeks. And we're like, oh, it's probably going to be chasing Mercedes for the rest of the year. And then, it was just kind of for a little bit. There really isn't a second team this year. You have McLaren. And then you just really don't have we're looking for somebody to step up and be the second team. And I think it will be Mercedes throughout the course of the year. Yeah, exactly. You have drivers or driver, but you don't really have that team. And I think Mercedes will kind of hold that role for the rest of the year. And I think they will have a good shot to finish second in the Constructor Cup. But this was a good weekend. They needed this weekend to bounce back.
Yeah, they're sitting on 199 points in second in the Constructors' Championship right now. Ferrari is third, a further 16 points back, and then Red Bull is another 21 points back of Ferrari. So it is still kind of close for second, but another fun fact, Red Bull has 162 points in the Constructors' Championship. Without Max Verstappen, they would be behind Alpine and last in the Constructors' Championship.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew they're only there because of Verstappen.
Max is doing work for Red Bull this season.
Some heavy lifting going on there.
Yeah, but you mentioned Mercedes. I'm curious to see when we go to Austria, because it's always hot there. can the Mercedes finally work in the heat? Because it's always been pretty good when it's cooler. Maybe you have a little bit of tire graining, but anytime you get to heat and tire degradation, the Mercedes is nowhere. And if they can show up with speed again at Austria, I'm more likely to take this team seriously, consistently for the rest of the year. And also, George Russell's having the season of his life so far. And if you can have Russell driving like this, and then Kimi Antonelli just about 6 or 7 seconds off of him, like he was for most of the day today, Mercedes suddenly becomes a very scary team because as great as Charles Leclerc is, I would say he's still a little bit of a better driver than Russell in my a little bit biased eyes, but I think Russell is having the better season this season. And then with Kimi Antonelli and Lewis Hamilton, who knows between those two? Because it feels like Hamilton's locked into P7 every week and can't get out of it. So I don't know what's going to happen with those two teams, but I would love to see the Mercedes deliver some more consistent speed as we head back to Europe over the next few weeks. But great race in Canada for the Silver Arrows. George Russell absolutely faultless pretty much the entire weekend, delivered a great pole and then a great win. And Kimi Antonelli, I don't think his move on Oscar Piastri into turn one is being talked about enough, because he absolutely did Oscar into turn one, just absolutely got him, and then hung out there. Was not under pressure from Piastri for most of the race, was putting more pressure on Verstappen for second than he was taking from Oscar for third. So I think this was the best race of Antonelli's career so far. I know he had the outstanding drive in Melbourne to start the year in the wet, but this to me is more impressive because you're up at the sharp end, you're fighting the big dogs of the sport, not cracking under pressure, hanging out, managing tires in what was a tough race with the way these tires were graining. I was super impressed with Antonelli today and Mercedes as a whole. It was great to see. But Oscar Piastri does end up extending his championship lead, obviously, because Lando Norris didn't finish this one. So Piastri now sits at the top of the driver's standings with a 22-point lead over Lando Norris. And with how consistent Oscar's been, that's going to be hard to overturn. And this is the kind of weekend that we talk about with Lando Norris, like, oh, if we want to see Lando Norris drive like a champion, his off weeks, he still needs to maintain and gain ground. And that's what Piastri did this week. So even though he wasn't necessarily flying away with it, it's hard to fault him for it regardless.
Yeah, I do think it's almost kind of, I know it's a long season and 22 points is doable, but it's almost at that time where it's like, okay, we got to start.
That's over pushing. 3 race wins if Piastri finishes second.
Right. So he's got to start pushing, and you're even in a tougher spot because it's not like you're racing for Verstappen or Leclerc or Russell, a guy with a different team that you can kind of, bully a little bit, like we've seen Verstappen do in the past. It's your teammate, so it just adds another element of you got to be more cautious around them, and obviously they're not really thinking about that when they're racing because they were very much door to door in Canada. So I mean, obviously, I know McLaren's going to sit them both down and be like, "Look, we know what's going on, we know what's at stake, but here are the rules." Now, will they play by the rules? Probably for a little bit. Next few weeks, they'll be clean around each other. They'll give each other some leeway. If they're around, if it's going to be like all let loose. It's just going to be just like they're racing someone on a different team. They won't even recognize the car's orange. It'll just be me versus that guy in the car.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it should be. I don't think, we talk about this in NASCAR a lot, especially with manufacturers and whatever, bigger tracks and whatnot. No one likes that. No one likes when you're racing. I know you're teammates, but you can't really help each other. So what's the point of being teammates, right? So I think what's best for the sport is for them to go at it. Now, obviously not right now. There's a lot of racing left, but if they need to, I think they will. They'll go at it, and I'm very excited to see because they are the best cars in the sport. So I'm very excited to see what goes down with that.
You mentioned letting them race, and Zach Brown has said all year, we're going to let them race. We want them to race each other, and he's also said we know they're going to come together at some point, and they have. So I hope he sticks with the let him race like he's been saying. But either way, I love to see him finally go at it because it was great racing up until it wasn't. But let's move on and talk about Nico Hülkenberg again because this guy just continues putting in performances. Got more points in Canada. I believe finished 8th, was it? I know he got 4 points. I believe that is 8th. Yeah, finished 8th in Canada. Another great weekend for Nico Hülkenberg. Now finds himself 11th in the driver standings. 11th. Outrageous from Nico Hülkenberg in a Sauber, in a steak, whatever. But I think with the upgrades they've made on that car into Spain, it is obviously a better car. Bortoleto is racing other guys now. It's not just Hulkenberg being magical, but he still is outperforming the car for sure in my eyes, and has delivered some great performances for that team. And the fact that he's knocking on the door of the top half of the grid in the standings is just absurd with how awful that car has been most of the season. He's only 3 points away from being ninth in the championship. He's 2 points off Ocon in ninth. So Hulkenberg is having one of the better seasons of his career, in my opinion, taking this car where he has. He's a great midfield driver, always has been. But kudos to Nico Hulkenberg once again.
Yeah, no, he's putting together a fantastic season. I know the argument out there is, well, Aston Martin's having a down year. And if they're having a better year, that's 2 more spots that he's not at 11th. Now he's back in 13th or whatever. But why are we trying to do that? He's driving.
So what?
He's doing an incredible job. I mean, you have Fernando Alonso in one of those cars. He's one of the premier talents in the sport. Like he's got the ability to outdrive
and the best driver of all time, Lance Stroll.
Yeah, he's 100% got the ability to outdrive a car. But he's doing a fantastic job. He's doing an excellent job. So I love seeing guys outdrive the car. And I honestly I don't know. Alexander Albon, is he outdriving the Williams car? Is Williams good and Sainz is struggling, or is Sainz where the Williams car is and Albon's outdriving it? I don't really know at this point. It's been a very interesting season for Williams, and you're kind of like,
I want to say Albon is barely out driving that car, because you look at what Sainz did on a day like today, went 16th to 10th in that car. So it does have speed, although I think when Albon stuck it up in like P5, P6, that is definitely out driving it. But this midfield is so like up and down. It can be Isaac Hadjar one week, then it's Albon the next, and it's Hulkenberg, and then it's Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon. It can be any one of these guys that's up there taking those last points positions, and it's impressive to watch it switch back and forth. However, what is not impressive to watch is any time Leclerc talks to his race engineer. Oh my goodness. This race came over the radio, okay, I think we should do plan C. After Ferrari said, let's do plan B. And Ferrari's like, okay, we'll do plan C. So then they pit him. And he's like, why have we put these tires on? And Ferrari's like, we're on plan B. And Leclerc was like, why are we on plan B? And they're like, don't worry about it. And just they shoehorned him into a 2-stop in that particular order of tires way too early. I think you got to at least let him get further into the race, figure out what he wants to do, and you never know. Maybe you can pull off the 1-stop. We've seen Leclerc work magic with tires before, so at least let him try. If the driver thinks that's what he can do, you need to listen to your all-star caliber driver. And then also, from the side of Leclerc, just don't pit. Ignore them. Stay out there.
Yeah, I get just staying out there, but I don't know. Then that's a bunch of issues, and you got to deal with the team.
What would Max Verstappen do?
Well, Max Verstappen.
What would Oscar Piastri do?
No offense to Leclerc, but I think
what would Lewis Hamilton do?
I think Piastri would 100%. I don't think there's a
okay. What would Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen, the most accomplished 2 drivers in the sport, do? They would both do what they want.
I think they stay out, but I also think they've kind of earned that privilege a little bit more. I mean, they do have.
If anyone's earned that privilege with Ferrari, it's Leclerc.
You would think, but does Ferrari run the most textbook organization?
I think, I don't know. It's still, Leclerc clearly doesn't trust the team, and he's been there for 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, no one trusts the team. I don't think Ferrari trusts themselves, and that reflects in their racing decisions. They very much are adamant that they don't trust themselves, because they're second guessing themselves to the point where the car pulls into the pit box. So it's been a struggle that I feel has gone on way too long now. You're kind of every year you're kind of just like, it's like the Dallas Cowboys. You're kind of just like, oh, this is how the season goes. But at what point, you're not the Dallas Cowboys. You don't have to go draft guys and you're a racing team. All you have to do is just make better decisions. It's not as hard as.
Can I draft a new car? Can I draft the RB19?
Dude, at this point, I'd let Ferrari do whatever they wanted, because they'd still screw it up somehow.
Yeah, you're probably right. But let's go over our predictions from Canada. I went for Piastri to win. McLaren didn't have it this weekend. Mercedes was great, so got that wrong. I went for Verstappen P2, did get that, so I notch a point, go up to 13 points on the season. And then I had Norris P3, and he didn't even finish the race. So that was incorrect, and Keegan had a bit of a rough one this week, as he now falls 6 points behind me in the F1 predictions.
Yeah, so like I said, I didn't go with my gut and put Russell on the podium. I went Verstappen to win, and I do think it's coming. It is it just kind of sucked that the one weekend where McLaren struggled, Mercedes just comes out of nowhere. And so if you're Verstappen,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, come on, right? His win's
Verstappen's
coming.
always great at Austria, to be fair.
Yeah, so he'll get back there. I'm not worried about him. But then I did have the two errors. I had Piastri and Norris in that order, and Mercedes just came out of nowhere. I do think Piastri had a good chance to come third if McLaren or Mercedes wasn't that good. I think it would have been Russell, Verstappen, Piastri. But and then Norris would have finished where he did because user error.
Bro, just ignoring Kimi Antonelli.
Well, I'm saying that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if Mercedes didn't come with the package they came with this weekend, if they weren't as good.
I don't know. I think Antonelli was just fast. I think Antonelli would have been on Russell no matter what kind of car they had.
I think he was fast
weekend.
as well. I mean, he was making moves even on the cars that weren't fighting for position, that weren't even passing zones. He was just going, "Yep, I'm going around you here," and made him work. So I do think he was incredible. But I'm just saying, if McLaren had come with the car they typically come with this year, I think he would have been finished fourth with Norris taking himself out. But I'm very excited to see what Kimi Antonelli has. Very, very excited. I may be turning into a Kimi Antonelli fan. This may be happening.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Because, you definitely should. But that is pretty much it for the F1 episode this week. We will be back in a couple weeks' time on F1 as we get you ready for Austria. I got an off week this week, but NASCAR content will continue rolling out. So if you want to see our Mexico City review, that'll be out on the channel already. And then we'll be getting you ready for Pocono later in the week. And then also we'll have some baseball talk for you later this week. But for now, this has been GTD. That's been Keegan. I've been Micah. And we'll see y'all later in the week.